The night my mom told me to leave the house I had bought, I thought I had heard her wrong. I had just come home after a long, tiring day in New York City. I dropped my bag by the door and saw her sitting in the living room with a tight, nervous smile. "We need to talk," she said. And just like that, everything got worse very quickly. She started by talking about how my brother deserved a fresh start, how he had been through so much, how families should help each other. Then she looked at me directly and said that I should move back to my apartment in the city so that he could live here. I reminded her, "But I paid for this house. It's mine. My name is on all the papers." She didn't even care. "You're hardly ever here, Sarai. You have your big career and your life in New York. Your brother has nothing. Don't be selfish." That word hit me like a punch. Selfish. She said it to me even though I bought a safe, nice home and let them live there almost for free. I noticed then that she had already started packing some of my things by the door, like she had planned this for days. She held out her hand for my keys and added almost casually that they were going to have a housewarming soon to celebrate finally having the home we had always dreamed of. I didn't go to that party. I saw the pictures online instead. My mom and my brother were smiling in my kitchen, grilling in my backyard. The captions were about our dream home after years of hard work. People asked if I had helped at all. My mom replied, "Not really." She was never around. That was the moment I decided maybe karma needed a little push. But before I continue, hit the subscribe button and tell me where are you watching this from, and what time of day is it? Growing up, it should have been clear that the night my mom kicked me out of my own house wasn't the first time she hurt me. It started a long time ago. I grew up in a quiet suburb in New Jersey. I was the second child, the one no one really planned for. My older brother Blaze was the star from the moment he could walk. My mom, Verity, called him her miracle, her champion, her ticket to a better life. My dad, Ansel, just went along with whatever made her happy. Most of the time, that meant everything in our family revolved around Blaze. When I was little, Saturdays meant sitting in cold metal bleachers, watching my mom scream herself hoarse for Blaze at football games, shaking cowbells, waving homemade signs with his jersey number. After the game, there would be parties, themed cakes, new gear, and everyone telling Blaze how amazing he was. I would be the kid holding empty cups and picking up trash, getting a quick good job, honey, almost by accident, when there was nothing else to say. When Blaze got his first car at graduation, a shiny used sports car that my parents could hardly afford, my mom cried happy tears in the driveway. When I got on the honor roll, she said, "That's great, Sarai. Can you help me clean the garage later? Your brother needs space for his equipment." It was always like that. Blaze was the future. I was the backup. The only people who really saw me were my grandparents, Odessa and Tobias. They lived a few blocks away and would invite me over after school on the nights my parents were busy shuttling Blaze to practices or meetings with his coaches. My grandfather would sit me at the kitchen table with the newspaper and explain basic things about money, like saving, interest, and why people buy stocks. My grandmother taught me chess and said, "You have to think 3 moves ahead, honey, especially when everyone keeps underestimating you." At school, I was the kid who joined the business club and the math team. I stayed late to help with fundraiser spreadsheets while everyone else took selfies in the parking lot. I started to realize something important. Numbers don't play favorites. They don't care if Blaze is the golden boy or if my mom loves him the most. Numbers only care if you pay attention and do the work. While my mom told everyone Blaze was going to make it big, I quietly built a life where I wouldn't have to beg for a seat at my own family's table. I just didn't know yet how far my mom would go to keep pretending that her golden son could do no wrong, even if it meant lying to herself, wrecking their finances, and pretending I never helped at all. By the time I was in my mid-teens, the difference between how my mom treated Blaze and me wasn't just a feeling anymore. It had become a routine. Blaze had gone off to college to study ansel eating, and my mom talked about it like he had been drafted into the NFL. Every phone call from him was a major event. She would put him on speaker, pace the kitchen, and hang on every word as he bragged about parties and networking with the right people. When the call ended, she'd sigh and say, "Your brother is really going places, Sarai. Just wait. He's going to change everything for this family." Meanwhile, I was a junior in high school, taking AP classes, running numbers for the school fundraiser, and working part-time at a local coffee shop to save some money. Nobody made signs for that. After Blaze graduated, things went downhill fast. He bounced between a couple of sales jobs, then announced one night at dinner that he was meant to be an entrepreneur. He had found a can't-miss opportunity to open a bar with some friends near his old college. My mom lit up like it was Christmas. "This is it. This is his big break. We have to help him," she told my dad. She used almost all of their savings and even took out a line of credit against the house to help him. My dad looked worried, but he signed the papers anyway because he never said no to my mom. I watched all of this quietly from the edge of the room, wondering how many spreadsheets I would have to fill to match the money they threw at my brother with one impulsive signature. The bar failed within a year. Blaze drank more than he worked. His partners bailed. Suddenly, the big break was just another bill. My mom didn't blame him, of course. She blamed the economy, the location, and his lazy partners. Then she started cutting corners. No more small vacations. No more repairs unless the roof was literally leaking. She picked up extra shifts at a local office, and my dad started doing side jobs on weekends. I picked up more hours at the coffee shop and started tutoring younger students in math. On top of that, I was doing most of the housework. "Blaze is under so much stress," my mom would say, handing me a long list of chores. "Let him focus on getting back on his feet. You're good with numbers. You'll be fine." It was crazy. Their son had blown through savings and credit, and somehow I was the one expected to quietly hold everything together. When I brought home a certificate for a regional math competition, my mom glanced at it and said, "That's nice. Hey, can you clean out the garage this weekend? Your brother might need to store some things from the bar." I stood out there surrounded by boxes of old promotional cups and bar stools, thinking, how can someone love a child so much that they are willing to set their whole life on fire for him, and at the same time barely notice the kid who is actually trying to help? The only time I felt truly seen was when I was with my grandparents. My grandfather would check in on my savings account and say, "You're doing what your parents should have done. Don't let anyone guilt you into giving up on yourself." My grandmother reminded me, "You don't have to stay in a place that doesn't value you just because you were born there." Their words stuck with me when I started applying to colleges. I filled out every scholarship form I could find, stayed up late writing essays while my mom scrolled through Blaze's latest business ideas on her phone. When the acceptance letter from NYU came with a financial aid package and a scholarship for students studying finance, I sat at the kitchen table shaking. I had a way out. My mom's reaction? "New York is so far. Who is going to help us if you're gone? What about your brother?" For the first time, I didn't swallow my answer. I said, "Maybe this time he can help you." And I mailed my acceptance off anyway. I thought moving to New York would leave all that dysfunction behind me. I had no idea it was just setting the stage for the biggest betrayal of all. New York felt like another planet compared to my parents' house in New Jersey. At NYU, nobody cared that my brother used to be a high school football star, or that my mom still talked about his glory days like they were yesterday. What mattered was whether you showed up, kept up, and could handle the pressure. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just the quiet kid in the background. I was the one getting picked for opportunities. I threw myself into my finance classes and landed an internship at a small firm in Manhattan my sophomore year. It wasn't glamorous at first. I spent a lot of time in a corner cubicle, cleaning up spreadsheets, organizing reports, and running tiny pieces of analysis that probably no one would remember. But people noticed that I never missed a deadline, never turned in something half-done, and always asked smart questions instead of trying to impress with big words. Inside that office, I wasn't Blaze's little sister. I was just Sarai. Every time I walked past skyscrapers on my way to work, weaving through crowds of people who all looked like they were going somewhere important, I felt a quiet, steady sense of rightness. This was where I belonged, in a place where effort actually counted. Back home, the story was very different. Blaze had moved back in with my parents after the bar failed. And suddenly he was on to his next big idea, an e-commerce app. He pitched it like he was in a startup documentary, full of big promises and fancy words about disruption and brand experience. My mom acted like she was a seasoned investor. My dad, as always, just looked tired. I called on Sundays and could hear the hope in my mom's voice. She told me how this one app was going to change everything. When I asked if they were still paying off debts from the bar, she brushed it off. "Debt is normal, Sarai. You have to spend money to make money." My stomach twisted because I knew she didn't really understand what she was saying. She just wanted to believe her son was still special. During my last year of college, everything shifted. My grandparents, Odessa and Tobias, both passed away within months of each other. They were old and we knew it was coming, but it still felt like the floor dropped out from under me. They were the only ones who had consistently seen me, believed in me, and told me I was more than a supporting character in my own life. After the funeral, the lawyer read their will. They left a little something to my dad and some keepsakes to my mom. Then he turned to me and said they had set aside a savings and investment account in my name, built quietly over the years, around $100,000. There was a handwritten letter from my grandfather. Tucked in the folder, it said, "Use this to build something that belongs to you, not to rescue people who refuse to save themselves." I sat in my tiny dorm room that night and cried. It felt like they were still looking out for me from beyond the grave. I graduated from NYU with honors and a job offer from the firm I'd interned at. I got a full-time analyst position in Manhattan with a good starting salary and a clear path upward. I moved into a small one-bedroom in Brooklyn and started doing exactly what my grandparents had taught me. I maxed out my 401k, opened an IRA, invested in index funds, and grew that inheritance instead of blowing it on shiny things. Meanwhile, Blaze's app went exactly where his bar went, nowhere. He burned through the small investor money he had, then turned right back to my parents. I found out through little hints in phone calls that my mom had cashed out more of their retirement accounts and taken on even more credit to keep him afloat. Every time I drove out to visit, I noticed things my mom didn't talk about. Late bills on the counter, the way she snapped when I asked if everything was okay, the way my dad's shoulders slumped more every time Blaze mentioned one more loan or just a little help. I realized then that the night my mom kicked me out of my house was just another step in a lifetime of being invisible to the people who should have loved me the most. But now I am free. I had my life, my career, and my money. I had built something for myself, and no one could take that away from me. One night, after Blaze stomped off to the basement because someone didn't agree with his new idea, my dad and I were sitting alone at the kitchen table. The house was quiet except for the soft hum of the fridge. My dad rubbed his forehead with his hand and sighed. He looked tired, more than usual. Finally, he said quietly, "Your mom believes in Blaze so much, she is willing to risk our entire house on him." I froze for a moment and asked, "Do you mean literally? You mean the house?" He hesitated. I could see him thinking hard, his eyebrows furrowed. Then he nodded slowly. I felt my stomach drop. We had used almost all our money. There was very little left. I thought about the bills, the car, the groceries. I thought about everything my parents had worked for, and all the money they had given to Blaze's dreams. That night, I drove back to Brooklyn with my hands gripping the steering wheel too tightly. The city lights flashed past me. I listened to the traffic and did math in my head. I counted every dollar I had saved. I added up the gifts from my grandparents. I thought about my job and my own little apartment. For the first time in my life, I was in a place where I didn't have to worry about keeping the lights on or paying rent. But then I thought about my parents. They were only one bad month away from losing our home because they couldn't stop helping Blaze chase his dreams. I knew I couldn't fix every bad choice they had made. But I also knew I couldn't just sit by and watch them get crushed by the consequences. I wanted to help, but I didn't realize that trying to help might give them an excuse to erase me from the story entirely and hand everything, including my money and generosity, right back to Blaze. The breaking point came on a rainy Sunday. I drove out to New Jersey and found my mom at the kitchen table, surrounded by a pile of unopened envelopes. The rain pattered softly against the windows. My mom jumped when she saw me and quickly tried to sweep the stack of papers into a pile like she was just organizing coupons. I picked up one envelope anyway. It was from the bank. I opened it slowly. My heart started to pound as I read the words: delinquent payments, possible foreclosure, losing the house. The house I grew up in, the one my parents had refinanced again and again to fund Blaze's big dreams, was hanging by a thread. My dad sat in his usual chair, staring at his coffee as if it might give him answers. Blaze was nowhere to be seen. "It's just a scare tactic," my mom said too quickly. "We'll catch up. Blaze is close to landing something big. Once that happens, all of this will go away." I looked at my dad. He didn't argue with her, but he didn't nod either. He just looked tired in a way that went deeper than needing a nap. I knew I couldn't fix every bad decision they had made, but I also couldn't sit there and watch them lose everything. I drove back to Brooklyn and spent that night doing what I do best, running numbers. I added up what they owed. I calculated how much it would cost to save the old house. I figured out what it would take to move them into something smaller, safer, and sustainable. Throwing money at the old mortgage would just keep them on life support a little longer. Buying them a new place in my name would at least give me some control and safety. A few weeks later, I asked my parents to meet me at a quiet diner halfway between my apartment and their town. I slid into the booth across from them, and my heart was pounding. I looked them both in the eyes and said, "You're drowning. No sugarcoating. The bank notices aren't going to stop. If you keep hanging on to the house just because it has history, you're going to lose not only the house but everything else, too." My mom opened her mouth to argue, but I kept going. I explained everything I had figured out. I had saved money from my job, from my grandparents, and even a little from my own careful planning. I had found a smaller place, a single-story bungalow a few towns over. It had a nice neighborhood, low property taxes, and was easier to maintain. I could buy it outright with a manageable mortgage and some of my savings. It would be in my name. They could live there. They could treat it as their retirement home, and together we could stop this cycle before it destroyed them. They stared at me like I had spoken another language. My dad was the first to speak. "You'd do that?" His voice cracked on the last word. My mom's eyes filled with tears, the kind she usually saved for Blaze. "You'd buy us a house," she whispered. Part of me wanted to say, "I'm not buying it for you. I'm buying it to keep you from crashing." But I swallowed that and nodded. "Yes," I said. "On one condition. It stays in my name. I handle the mortgage, the taxes, and the big repairs. You pay what you can for utilities and day-to-day stuff. But we are done with loans for big ideas. No more cashing out retirement. No more second chances on bad business plans. This is it." My mom wiped her eyes and grabbed my hand. "You're an angel, Sarai. You're saving us," she said. For the first time in my life, I saw her look at me with something close to genuine gratitude. We closed on the bungalow a few months later. It was cute in a simple way. A small front porch, a tidy and open living room, and a backyard with enough space for my mom to finally plant all the flowers she had pinned on Pinterest, but never had the money or energy to buy. The grocery store and the hospital were closed. The street was full of retirees walking dogs and kids on bikes. It was exactly the kind of safe, quiet place my grandparents would have chosen for themselves. On move-in day, I stood in the empty living room and handed my parents a pair of keys. "This is your fresh start," I said. "Don't waste it." My dad hugged me like he didn't want to let go. My mom immediately started talking about paint colors and where to put the couch. Blaze showed up late, carrying one box and a lot of opinions. "Nice place," he said, looking around like he was evaluating a potential listing. "Kind of small, but it has potential. Maybe upgrade the kitchen and add a deck. Did you guys finally get a good deal?" My mom jumped in before I could say anything. "Your sister helped," she said vaguely. "It's a family effort." I let it go in the moment, but a little alarm bell rang in my head. Over the next few weeks, the language my mom used started to shift. At first, it was, "Sarai found us a house." Then it became, "We finally got the house we deserve." Eventually, when she talked to neighbors, I heard her say, "We bought this place after all the sacrifices we made for our kids." Blaze started dropping hints too. "So, where am I supposed to stay when I need a break from the city?" he asked one afternoon, casually leaning in the kitchen doorway. "You've got your own place, Mads," I reminded him. "Mom and Dad are here. It just makes sense for me to crash in the spare room." My mom chimed in. "It would be good for him to have a stable base. You're so busy with work and your life in New York. You hardly ever use your old room." I reminded her gently but firmly. "This house is in my name. I bought it for you and Dad to live comfortably. That's it." She gave me that tight smile I knew too well. Of course. Of course. You're such a blessing." But as she walked away, I heard her whisper to Blaze, "Don't worry, we'll figure something out." I told myself I was overreacting, that I was just sensitive because of our history. I wanted to believe this time would be different, that my mom wouldn't twist my help into something that erased me completely. Then she called one evening and said almost cheerfully, "We're thinking about having a housewarming party. You know, invite family and some of Blaze's friends. Celebrate finally getting our dream home." Dream home. The word sat heavy in my chest. I didn't argue. I just said, "Sure, Mom. Let me know the date." And hung up, not realizing they were already planning a celebration where I would be written out of the story entirely. The first sign that something was off was how vague my mom suddenly got about the housewarming. She had been so excited on the phone when she first mentioned it, going on about decorations and food, and finally celebrating. But when I asked for a date, she kept saying, "We're still figuring it out. I'll let you know." Weeks passed, and every time I brought it up, she changed the subject. Work got busy as always, and I let it slide, telling myself maybe they were still settling in, maybe money was tight and they needed to wait. Then one Friday night, after a late meeting, I was zoning out on my couch in Brooklyn, scrolling through my phone, when Blaze's post popped up. He'd tagged my mother, a bunch of his old friends, and even a few people I vaguely recognized from our hometown. There he was in my kitchen, leaning against my island, beer in hand, a big grin on his face. The caption read, "So grateful to finally move my parents into our dream home after years of hard work and sacrifice. Couldn't have done it without persistence and faith. Here's to new beginnings." There were photos of the backyard strung with lights, a grill smoking in the corner, people laughing over plates piled with food. Another shot of my mom and Blaze holding up a cheesy, "Home Sweet Home" sign, standing in front of the house like they had just signed the mortgage themselves. I felt my heartbeat in my throat as I scrolled through the comments. People were writing things like, "You're such a good son, and you're really stepping up for your parents, man," with heart emojis and clapping hands. One comment near the bottom made my stomach flip. Someone I didn't recognize had written, "Did your sister help too?" I thought she was doing well in the city. Blaze hadn't answered yet, but a few minutes later, a notification popped up. My mother had replied from her account. "Not really. She's never around, always busy with her own life." This was mostly on us and Blaze. I stared at those words for a long time. It wasn't just that she lied. It was how easily she erased me. How comfortably she slid me out of the story in front of an audience. That was the moment something in me went from hurt to ice cold. Without thinking too much about it, I grabbed my keys and my bag and headed for my car. The drive out to their town felt shorter than usual. My thoughts were so loud I barely noticed the traffic. When I turned onto their street, I could already see the glow from the backyard and hear music drifting over the fences. Cars lined both sides of the road. People were laughing, walking in with bottles of wine and gift bags. I parked a little farther away out of the direct line of sight and walked up the sidewalk like I belonged there, because I did. I had done more than anyone else at that party. I belonged there. I slipped through the side gate into the backyard. No one noticed me at first. They were too busy posing for group photos and balancing paper plates. I saw Blaze at the grill holding court like some kind of hero, telling a story about working hard and never giving up. My mom stood near the patio door talking to a small group of neighbors. "We're just so proud we finally bought this place after everything we've been through," she was saying, her hand resting on her chest like she was in a commercial. "We sacrificed a lot, but it was worth it. This is the home we always dreamed of." Someone asked, "Did your daughter help any with this? She's in finance, right?" My mom gave a little laugh that made my skin crawl. "You know how it is. She's never really around, always busy with her own life." This was mostly Blaze and me. I didn't even feel myself move. One second, I was standing at the edge of the yard. Next, I was walking straight into the middle of the circle. The conversations around us dimmed, then stopped altogether. "That's funny," I said, my voice steady in a way that surprised me. "Because as far as I remember, I'm the one who wired 6 figures to make this house happen. You know this." I pulled a folded envelope from my bag and held it up. "This is the closing statement from the bank. See whose name is on it? Mine. There is no one else on the deed. No co-owner, no co-signer, just me." My dad had been hovering near the back door, and I could see the color drain from his face as he finally realized what was happening. He stepped closer, and I could see his face was full of shame, but also a little relief. He knew the truth. He had always known. My mom tried to speak, but her voice was trembling, and it sounded small, like it didn't have enough strength to fill the backyard. "We are your parents," she said, her eyes wide. "We deserve a home. Your brother needs a safe place to get back on his feet. You have your career, your apartment, your opportunities. You were just pretending," I interrupted, my voice shaking at first, but then I found my strength. "Pretending you bought this house. Pretending Blaze did anything hard except use your credit and make himself look good. Pretending I never did a single thing to help you. Just so you could keep telling your story that Blaze is perfect and special since he was 17. I turned slightly so that everyone at the party could hear me. I wanted them to understand. I bought this house because they were about to lose the old one. Their old house was full of unpaid bills and foreclosure notices because of failed businesses. I put it in my name so they could have a safe place to live. I was going to give it to them later, when I knew they were ready to take care of it. But I don't feel that way anymore." The air in the backyard felt heavy, almost like it had weight pressing down on it. People were silent. Someone set their drink down carefully. A woman near the back whispered, almost like she was scared to be heard, "Oh my God." Blaze took a step closer, his jaw tight, like he was trying to hold in all the anger he felt. "You're being dramatic," he said. "You can't just show up and make Mom feel bad. This is a family matter." I looked him straight in the eyes. I could see that he thought I would back down. I didn't. "You're right," I said quietly. "This is a family matter. And that's exactly why I'm done letting you and Mom change the story to make yourselves look good." I took a deep breath. Then I raised my voice just enough so everyone could hear. "The party's over. Everyone who is not on the mortgage, leave my property now." At first, nobody moved. They looked at me like they thought I was joking. My mom's face went pale and she sputtered, "You can't do that, Sarai. You can't just kick people out in the middle of a party." "Watch me," I said firmly. "You've been happy to kick me out of things that were mine. Consider this balance." My dad put a hand on my mom's shoulder and said quietly, "Verity, we need to let them go." That seemed to break the spell. People started gathering their things, whispering apologies to each other, avoiding eye contact with us, and slowly making their way toward the gate. Blaze looked at my mom like he expected her to fight harder, but she just stood there shaking. Within minutes, the backyard was almost empty. The string lights still glowed softly above us, but the bright energy of the party was gone. Plates with half-eaten food sat on tables. Cups were scattered around. Music played quietly from the speaker, but no one was left to listen. The backyard looked less like a celebration and more like the quiet aftermath of a storm. My mom finally found her voice. "You're going to regret this," she hissed. "You're turning your back on your own family." I felt strangely calm. "No," I said. "I'm turning my back on being used. There's a big difference." I put the envelope in my pocket, turned off the music, and started blowing out the candles one by one. Blaze and my mom watched me. For the first time in my life, they didn't look powerful or special. They just looked small. They were standing in a house they had tried to claim, but they had never actually owned it. As I locked the back door that night, I knew one thing for sure. This was the last time they would ever get to rewrite my story without consequences. What happened after, when the dust settled and the truth spread, would be the part they never saw coming. The aftermath didn't hit all at once. It came slowly, like waves washing over the sand. Each wave revealed more of the truth my mom had been hiding from herself for years. The next morning, I drove back to the house with a folder full of papers. My parents were in the kitchen, sitting silently, like they had been waiting there all night. Blaze wasn't there. I guess even he didn't want to be around for the uncomfortable morning. I sat down at the kitchen table and laid everything out carefully. The deed to the house, the mortgage statements, letters from the bank about their old house, a simple breakdown of all their debts. I tapped the papers gently. "Here's where we really are," I said. "You are months behind on payments for the old house. That foreclosure notice isn't a scare tactic, it's a countdown. This place," I tapped the deed again, "is in my name. I bought it with my money. I gave you a home, so you wouldn't end up on the street. Last night, you threw a party in my house, pretended you bought it, and told people I never helped. You didn't have to lie. You didn't have to erase me." My mom flinched like I had slapped her. Her face twisted with embarrassment. She snapped, "We don't need everyone knowing our business." What was I supposed to say? That our daughter had to rescue us? "You didn't have to lie," I repeated softly. "You didn't have to erase me." My dad didn't look at either of us. He just stared at the stack of papers. "What happens now?" he asked quietly. I took a deep breath. "Now I stop doing what Grandpa told me not to do," I said. "I stop rescuing people who refuse to save themselves. I'm selling this house." My mom's head snapped up. "You can't do that," she said, her voice rising. "We have nowhere to go. You can't just throw your parents out on the street." "I'm not throwing you out," I said calmly. "I'm giving you 90 days. You can sell what you don't need. Find an apartment you can actually afford. Talk to a financial advisor. Do whatever you need to do as adults. I'll even pay your first month's rent and your security deposit. But I am done being your safety net while you rewrite my story." She called me heartless and ungrateful. She accused me of letting money change me. But her words didn't hurt me this time. For the first time, they didn't stick. They fell flat, showing themselves for what they really were. Tools she used to keep me in line. My dad, his eyes wet with quiet tears, just nodded slowly. Blaze tried to storm back a week later, full of anger about family loyalty and public humiliation. "You can't take this from Mom and Dad," he shouted. But by then I had already met with a realtor and put the house on the Ancelet. I looked at him calmly and said, "I can't take what they never owned. And you don't get to cash in on my hard work because you finally noticed what real consequences feel like. Word got around faster than I expected. People who had been at the party told their version of the story, including my mom's she never helped, and my little reality check afterward. Some folks unfriended her quietly. A few people called me to say they were proud I stood up for myself. On social media, Blaze went quiet for a while. When he came back months later, his posts were about working hard in real life, late-night shifts, humble beginnings, nothing like the shiny CEO persona he had tried to create before. The old house, the one my parents had refinanced too many times, eventually went into foreclosure. The bank stopped sending warnings and started sending final notices. They lost it. My parents ended up in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment in a less-than-ideal part of town. The kind of place with thin walls, overflowing dumpsters, and neighbors who played loud music at all hours. My mom hated it. She complained about the noise, the lack of space for her plants, the way the light never seemed to shine right. She complained about everything except the choices that got her there. Blaze bounced between jobs. Nothing fancy, mostly physical work and low-level service positions he would have laughed at when he thought he was born to be a CEO. For the first time, no one called him a prodigy. He was just another guy dragging himself through long shifts, paying bills one paycheck at a time. Meanwhile, I closed on the sale of the bungalow. After paying off the remaining mortgage and fees, I took the profit and did what I always do. I invested. I boosted my retirement accounts, diversified my portfolio, and set aside a chunk for a future home that would belong only to me and any family I chose on my own terms. I even started therapy, because walking away from your parents doesn't come without scars, no matter how justified it is. There were nights I cried, not because I regretted my decision, but because I was grieving the idea of the family I never actually had. My mom sent emails and left voicemails for a while. The messages swung between guilt trips and apologies that never really admitted what she did. "We're family," she would say. "Don't you think you went too far?" I never responded. I kept one email from my dad, though. It said, "I'm sorry I didn't protect you the way I should have. You deserved better. I hope you build the life your grandparents knew you could." I read that on the days doubt crept in. Here's what I learned, and what I want anyone listening to this to hear. You do not owe your family your sanity, your money, or your future just because they gave you a last name. Love without respect is not love. It is control pretending to be love. Being the good child does not mean sacrificing yourself so everyone else can stay comfortable in their bad decisions. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to walk away and build something better from scratch. My grandparents were right. You cannot save people who refuse to save themselves. But you can choose to save you.